So, a fake Iranian activist that didn't quite exist, that was created by a literal cult, was pushed by mainstream media being used for idiot for this case, for sinister reasons. And what I mean is sinister actually being that in the literal sense of the word. Even pushed by one Donald Trump himself in order to undermine the JCPOA. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. And yes, indeed, everything that I just said is absolutely true. There was a bombshell article put by The Intercept. Now, the thing is, at this point, we should kind of accept that nations and groups would use the internet for sinister purposes. If you can create a reality that goes beyond what's actually real, people don't necessarily know what's real in many of these cases. When somebody writes an article, does the publication really talk to that particular journalist? Do they know that journalists even exist outside of just communications that's taking place electronically? And you propagate that all across the media sphere, and not just all across the media sphere. People with specific intentions to change media perception. Meaning, for example, situations where media works with certain political figures because they either agree with those political figures or they're just trying to shift conversation and change perspective and give a perspective of things that is not indicative of reality. It's hard to know what's real in many of these cases. But in this very particular story, this story is fascinating like nobody's business. So this is, let's see. This is Heshmat Alavi. Heshmat Alavi. Heshmat Alavi has written stories for Forbes, Daily Caller, several mainstream media outlets. The problem here, and even boosted by one Donald Trump. Donald Trump comes out and puts out a bit of propaganda for Iran, essentially saying that this deal has been allowing them to increase their military budget. When asked by the Washington Post, where did you get that from? He pointed to a story written by this guy. What's the problem in this case? This guy doesn't exist. Yes, this guy doesn't exist. Now, this guy is created by the same group that pays one Mr. John Bolton to get out there and give speeches talking about Iran is going to be toppled. That speech that John Bolton gave where he said Iran, I'm going to be celebrating in Iran in 2018 if I'm not mistaken. He was paid by a group called the MEK. That group is literally a cult. It was on the U.S. cults list, or terrorist cults list, going all the way for years. I think they didn't take it off until like 2007 or something to that effect. But that really hasn't changed. This is the leader of that cult, Marjam Rajavi. Now, for the most part, you're not really allowed to know the names of the other members of the cult, which is why people are calling it somewhat of a cult. They're existing in the shadows. Now, again, people who pay John Bolton are the same people that created this guy, who's not really a guy at all, just somewhat of a fabrication, and put out stories that was used by the Western media to attack Iran. Now, everybody likes somebody on the other person's team to be a defector. Because you could say, not only do I think that this person is horrible, or this group is horrible, or this country is horrible, but that guy is from there, and he also has that opinion. It's a way of bolstering your own opinion. This is why Fox News likes having black people on Fox News. Just being honest. But in this very specific instance, this account was created specifically for a U.S. audience. Understand why, though. Think about it for the moment. You have an Iranian account that's supposedly an activist that is being used to attack Iran, and that is being mostly for a U.S. audience. This group doesn't even work out of Iran, per se, because the group is not necessarily prized in Iran. People like John Bolton likes this group because they are looking for somebody to take power in Iran, and they are looking for any hand that they can work with in order to do so. The patsy within the country itself, kind of like the Guaido of Iran. Here's the catch. Trump used this guy as a pretext to undermine the JCPOA, or part of his justification for undermining it, but it goes beyond that. The group, the point and what the group is trying to accomplish is to get Western support to take down or undermine the government of Iran. And so the stories that they put out are for Western audiences. They're looking for an intervention because, again, they're deeply unpopular within the country itself. This story is absolutely fascinating. So multiple sources told The Intercept that this guy doesn't exist. This group is working out of Albania. It's kind of like a secret layer out of Albania where they write articles and blog posts and all sorts of things from this particular person or persona. And it pushes it out to various media audiences in Western media that would promote it. It's astonishing. In some cases, they're giving credit or outright boosting the MEK. In other cases, it's more of a tax on the Iranian government. In all cases, the Western media loved it. There are over 60 stories written by this account that was published by Forbes. None of the people, however, met him because, again, the guy doesn't exist. And the various sources that are talking to The Intercept are saying, yeah, this is essentially an account created by this group and essentially writes and says whatever this group tells it to say. Understand the goal of this. The goal of this is regime change. Part of the reason that Donald Trump was able to use the articles for this is because the goals of this group and the goals of people like John Bolton are the same. When John Bolton is giving this speech, I've shown this speech before.
And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
With many failures on John Bolton's record, this was just another one of those failures. You were not celebrating in Tehran in 2019. But the people who were yelling and screaming, who loved this, and the people who were paying him were the MEK. They were the MEK, the same people who were writing for this particular account. I'm fascinated by the story. Not that I'm shocked that there are groups that do this. It's more so that group's very specific intent is to take power. But they're wanting to take power in the same way that Juan Guaido wants to take power in Venezuela. They're an opposition group. They're an opposition group that is opposition to the main government in this case. But my point is this. In the same way that the government in this country is working with opposition forces in Venezuela to take power, the MEK also wants to be that group and has been paying right-wing figures within the United States to kind of boost their name, put their name up. This is not for an audience in Iran. I just want to be very clear on this. This is for an audience in Western media. And Western media have been useful idiots to this stuff. This is utterly fascinating. Utterly fascinating. There's something else with this. Something else. Right, the White House used this to boost or to undermine the JCPOA. Again, guy didn't exist. MEK. Trying to think, is there anything else? Maybe there's not anything else. There wasn't a lot on the story. It just kind of goes to this notion of be very aware that what you're reading may not be indicative of reality, especially with stuff like this. A Twitter account exists for this guy. He has over 30,000 followers, including a number of journalists. This is the part that gets me, I think. mainstream media is following this guy like he's a real person. And for all intents and purposes, up until this point, would have said that this is a real guy going after Iranian government, and they could point to him saying, see, this is what taking place in Iran. This guy is telling me so. Missing the point that, this guy wasn't real. Daily Caller, diplomat according to spokespeople for the publication. Let's see. He was not paid for his writing. I bet he wasn't. He probably would have paid you in order to get those writings in. They're working out of a base in Albania. There was a 2012 deal to remove them from the U.S. terror list facilitated by the movement of thousands of MEK members from Iraq to Albania. Jesus Christ. From 1997 to 2012, the MEK was listed as a foreign terrorist organization by the U.S. State Department, a status that was finally revoked as part of a diplomatic deal struck by the Obama administration. A former MEK member now living in Canada, Reza Sideghi, confirmed that the trio identified by Harani was involved with the group's online information operations. Said he was a member of the MEK until 2008, involved in lobbying activities in the United States, as well as operating at the MEK's former base at Camp Ashraf in Iraq. He described a growing online propaganda center run by the group intended to sway online discourse about Iran. We were always active in making false news stories to spread foreign press in Iran. At Camp Server, there is computers set up to do online information operations. Over the years, this activity has grown more intense with the introduction of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. Isn't that amazing? Again, I guess the thing here is not necessarily to be blown away by the story per se. It's more so in the way that Western media can be taken in by narratives that they themselves want to kind of run with. In this case, you have an opposition group that is literally looking for regime change and is literally looking for Western powers to help them with that task, and is putting out news stories, fake personas, Twitter posts, blogs, all of these things for the goal of doing that. And in order to undermine the JCPOA, one of the things that Donald Trump used was one of these fake accounts to make that work. Now, mind you, he didn't need that. He was just looking for something to kind of hook something into. But he found a willing audience with Western media and one fake account assisting or trying to do so. An opposition group deeply unpopular in Iran is known for sophisticated propaganda. The MEK over the past decade has turned its attention to English language audiences, especially in countries like the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, whose foreign policies are crucial nodes in the MEK's central goal of overthrowing the Iranian regime. I'll leave this article here. I have a couple of articles that I want to get to before I have to leave for today, but I thought this one was really, really good. There's another article by The Intercept and Glenn Greenwald that talks about Lula and how he was actually railroaded and how there was information and leaked messages attesting to such. Essentially illegal behavior by that prosecutor that was involved in that particular case. What is it called? Car wash, Operation Car Wash. But I'll leave this here. I don't just want to be too long because there's not a lot on it. It was just an interesting story. All right. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.